The Bible calls them principalities, powers, rulers of darkness in high places. And when I read that phrase, high places, I wonder if that doesn't mean multidimensional, going to a place that's maybe in another dimension. And we think of the UAP phenomenon of today where things are popping in and popping out, people are being abducted, but there's genetic research going on. And I think everybody knows about it. Everybody knows that there is illicit genetic research being done by the fallen ones. And we, over the years, have managed to just ignore this and not talk about it. You're talking about it.
Well, again, I'm blessed and I'm grateful to been tasked with this, and I think it's interesting because as the days get darker, evil is becoming more pronounced. But on the other side of that, the revelation that God is giving. Now, look, God's people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Those are his words. Sometimes people get mad at me and say, no, they're not. So you take it up with the wrong. That's God. That's not me. And he said, because his people reject knowledge. And the whole thing in the Holocaust of Giants, which, again, ladies and gentlemen, this was Tom Horn. Timothy Alberino was on that Holocaust of Giants. But what's interesting about that is that it's probably one of the best presentations of the giant presence, not only in the Americas, but around the world in the unholy sea. These are specific DVDs, documentaries that are available from the Prophecy Club. The Holocaust of Giants is one, but the unholy sea is another. It was literally case after case of the Catholic Church covering up the presence of giants and destroying their bones and giving the different areas of the Mediterranean orders, and they would do it through the priesthood. Wherever there was a cathedral, a church, the head priest would be trained what to do with out-of-place artifacts. Now, guess what? They didn't want to dump the gold. They kept the gold, but they wanted to dump the bones. Sardinia, Malta, some of the places. For instance, it was in Ecuador. This is interesting, Gary. Santa Elena. I don't speak Spanish. I murder it, but I don't speak it. Santa Elena, Ecuador, is where the giants that fled the Middle East landed in South America. And that entire giant history and narrative pretty much flows out from that. It flows into Peru, it flows into Colombia, and it's very, very interesting because some of the genetic structure in those areas is not what you would think is Latin or South American. I mean, they have some interesting genetic manifestations of humans, especially red hair, especially blue-eyed, blonde-haired. But what's interesting is you can't separate the fact that we are surrounded by the evidence of the obvious, but the obvious is covered up because they don't want people to know. Here's the bottom line for our talk. Everything that's in all the DVDs, the research I've done, they don't want people to realize the truth of God's word, that anyone who does not come into contact with God by way of Jesus Christ, there's no other way, is essence eternally cut off forever. So you can understand, Gary, and I know you know this, I'm saying this rhetorically, we can understand that truth like this, they don't want covered up because at the right moment, when the Antichrist and all of his forces, they're going to launch the greatest deception. They'll use evidence that's been hidden to say it's just the right time now. You've evolved. Humanity's evolved where they can embrace all these lies, but they'll be so if you're gonna basically seed the narrative or pollute the narrative, probably in this case pollute the narrative, you're going to give evidence that is in the wrong context to justify your deceptive statements.